What is up, guys, and welcome back to I Never Knew That. So today, if you watched last week's video, you will know that we're going to be talking about peasants in the Middle Ages and after that. So let's define what a peasant is. A peasant at the time was an agricultural worker or a farmer who was not like a servant because he didn't exactly serve someone. Instead, he had his own land that he lived on, and he worked on that land to make food, to eat, and to sell, and then he would pay rent to the owner of the land. So when you refer to the entire class of peasants in the feudal system, and the feudal system is an order of class, which the peasant is probably the lowest, then you go all the way up to the king. So on the feudal system, the peasant is the lowest, and when you refer to peasants as a whole, you would call them the peasantry. So when you refer to the peasantry, you refer to all the peasants on the feudal system. So the word peasant has actually been somewhat of a decline of usage since 1970 because the word peasant had somewhat of a derogatory context because peasants were the lowest on the feudal system. So instead of using the word peasant, some people prefer to use the word farmer or agricultural worker, but those were actually a little different than peasants, and the peasants, even though they did that, they're called peasants. So peasants composed the majority of people in the Middle Ages, and they were also the lowest class, like I said before. But the majority of people during the Middle Ages were going to be peasants because they were working and producing food, and they really drove the economy during that time. And like I said, they did not own land exactly, but they lived on their own land, which kind of made them different from servants. So a peasant would live on his own land and pay a rent, which is kind of like today's property tax, to the landowner, and he would make food. And in medieval Europe, a peasant, instead of living on his own land, a lot of times he would also live in a manor, which would be owned by a high-ranking official, like a bishop or a lord. But later, after this, the lord or the bishop owning the manor was replaced by individual ownership of land by the peasant because of the Black Death. So what happened is the Black Death comes through in around 1300, and what it does is it killed so many people that there was a lot of land there was more land to people ratio than there was before. So peasants ended up getting a lot of land that they were not previously able to own. So now the peasants have more land, and since so many people had died, labor from peasants was also really hard to get. So kind of after 1300s, the life of peasants really went up, and they kind of rose on the feudal system because now they're owning more land, their labors are in more need, and then around 1440, the printing press was invented. And the printing press really made learning and literacy open to anyone who wanted to get it, pretty much. It was very easy to obtain now. You didn't need a high education, you didn't need to go to a fancy school, and now literacy has just become to the common people. So now, after the Black Death and the printing press, peasants now have their own land, their labor is really highly valued, they can become very literate and learn many new things with the printing press. So after around 1400, the peasants really rose on the feudal system and kind of went from really being the lowest, he's a peasant, to he's actually, a peasant, really had somewhat of a respect for him because now they're really driving the economy even more than they were before. So the decline of peasantry really started in Russia around 1800, because in around 1800, from 1800 to 1840, you went from having 57% of the population to being peasants down to 31.6. That is how much the percentage of peasants dropped. And then in 1861, all the peasants were emancipated, so now peasants didn't even exist in Russia after 1861. And with Russia being the largest part of Europe, everything else kind of followed that norm. And if you go over to Germany at the same time, peasantry is actually still doing pretty well. Peasants are still a very vital part of culture. They're managing the resources of the community they're in. They're helping the life of the community, and they actually really did a lot for the community, even after 1861 in Germany. So Germany kind of kept on their tradition of peasantry later on from the rest of Europe, and just slowly died out over the course of time, the natural flow of things. But in France, things are a little bit different. So peasantry actually ended in a more extreme way in France than it did either in Germany or Russia, because in Russia it just declined and then got abolished. And then in Germany it just slowly died out over the course of history. But if we go to France, well, we have the French Revolution in 1789. And the French Revolution, if you don't know, it started when revolutionaries stormed the Bastille to set people free from it, from the oppressive government. But a lot of those revolutionaries were peasants. So now these peasants have risen up and they're fighting against the government. And what they ended up doing was they actually destroyed the feudal system of the French culture. So now in France, there is no feudal system. And without a feudal system, you can't really have one person, just because the way he was born, being higher in rank than another person. And without that, peasants can't exist. You know, they're no longer peasants. But now, what used to be a peasant is just as equal as a lord. You know, you're working and you're just as equal as the guy who's teaching people in a church. And that is how peasantry kind of ended in France. So in Russia, it was slowly dying out, then it got abolished. In Germany, nothing really happened like that. It just went on with history and died out when everything else did. And then in France, with the French Revolution, things really just came to a head, and peasantry just killed itself out, you know, and they became along with the rest of society. Alright, and that is what I have on peasants. I hope you guys enjoyed that, but you know, at the end of every video, what we do is we pick a new topic from our cup of topics that I've prepared. So, if you watch my channel, the last 3 videos have all taken place in the Middle Ages. So let's really hope this next topic is not from the Middle Ages, so I'm gonna really shake this cup up, because I don't know if I scrambled these topics good enough. Okay, I think we're ready to pick a topic. Let's hope it's not in the Middle Ages. Let's see what this says. Alright. Ooh, this is actually a really good one, guys. I mean, they're all good, but some, to me, are more exciting when I first read them. This is the history of the Rubik's Cube. And guys, look at this. I even have an original Rubik's Speed Cube on my desk. This is an actual Rubik's Speed Cube made by the brand. This is going to be an interesting one, so we're going to have to really enjoy this. So, hope you guys enjoyed that video. Stick around for next week's video. We are very excited for that. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys next week. Bye, and continue learning.